you're going to be in a relationship with Tom? Are you talking about your dad or something?
Well, far back, I'll say a couple years ago, he extended his hand. He was like, come work out with me in Tampa. Flew down there, Dad came, and we rode with him. He took me in his truck to this field, to his high school field. Then from then on, he was just telling me knowledge, and I filmed everything. I recorded everything. So now, even sometimes I go back and just listen to the things that he said at that time, and it registers. You know, everything that he said back then registers now, and it applies. So that's what I'm thankful for.
Tom Brady is finally addressing the elephant in the room, the swirling controversy over Shedeur Sanders' shocking NFL draft slide. And let's just say his explanation is raising even more eyebrows. The legendary quarterback, who's been mentoring Shedeur for years and even has part ownership in the Las Vegas Raiders, is now claiming that he couldn't do anything to help Shedeur get drafted earlier because the NFL has allegedly blackballed not only Shedeur, but also his brothers Shiloh and Deion Jr., all because of their father Deion Primetime Sanders. Fans were furious when Shedeur, who's widely regarded as a top-tier quarterback prospect, didn't get picked until the 5th round, 144th overall in the 2025 NFL draft. This wasn't just disappointing, it was downright confusing. Shedeur isn't some random player with average stats, he's the son of an NFL icon. He's been trained by Tom Brady himself for 5 years, and he was projected to go in the 1st or 2nd round. The NFL passing on him that many times.
They didn't even have him on his board, on their board. They took him off, and they took him off because the owner said, take him off. I don't want that guy. I don't want this entitled person on our team.
A lot of this was because of Deion Sanders. I think a lot of this was about a message to his father. A lot of this was about, hey, you'll never run this. This is us. We ain't even hire you as a coach in the National Football League. What makes you think you don't have that kind of say?
Tom Brady sabotaged Shedeur because he's plotting one last comeback. It's not as crazy as you might think. Mark Davis wanted Tom Brady to be a part owner so bad, he basically gave him 5% of the Raiders for hundreds of millions less than it was.
Thank you, Tom. I appreciate
I seen you have one too, Tom. Don't think I seen.
I was just a rental. Hey, I had a few bucks in my pocket at that point. I've seen some car stories.
It felt personal. People assumed Tom Brady, being a part owner of the Raiders and having that tight mentorship with Shedeur, would absolutely advocate for him to be drafted early. So when Shedeur got repeatedly snubbed, even by the Raiders, fans were livid, and fingers pointed directly at Brady. Skip Bayless was one of the first to publicly accuse Brady of dropping the ball. In a series of tweets, Skip said it was obvious Tom was the one who warned the Raiders to steer clear of Shedeur. He pointed out that if Brady truly had his mentees back, the Raiders wouldn't have passed on him not once, not twice, but multiple times. Skip even called Tom out for being part of the reason Shedeur was humiliated on draft night. The theory took off online like wildfire, with fans speculating that maybe Brady had secretly sabotaged Shedeur for reasons unknown, or worse, political. But then came Tom's alleged response, and it shifted the entire narrative. According to reports, Tom says he did support Shedeur, but that he was powerless against what was happening behind the scenes. He's claiming that certain higher-ups in the NFL made a conscious decision to freeze Shedeur out specifically to send a message to Deion Sanders. Apparently, Deion's larger-than-life personality and unapologetic approach to coaching has ruffled feathers at the top. The NFL, according to insiders, wanted to put him in his place. And what better way to humble him than by ensuring his sons were overlooked in the draft? Let's not forget Deion Sanders isn't your typical football figure. He's flashy, bold, and outspoken. He dominated as a player and is now shaking up the college football world as a coach, refusing to play by the NFL's unwritten rules. He brings charisma, confidence, and swagger to everything he does. But while fans love it, it seems some NFL execs aren't as entertained. Rumor has it they've had enough of the primetime energy.
Tom, do you think a college kid needs a phantom like a Rolls Royce?
Nah, Hey, now it's not a Phantom; it's a Rolls Royce Cullinan.
I think he needs to get his ass in the film room and spend as much time in there as possible.
Thank you,
less
Tom.
time in the car and more time in the film room.
Thank you, Tom. I appreciate
And I
that.
seen you had one too, Tom. Don't think I seen.
I was just a rental. Hey, I had a few bucks in my pocket at that point. I see some car stories when we're together.
I've been covering sports for 30 years plus. I have never seen a projected first round pick drop like this. 5 quarterbacks, as of the time of taping this show, have been picked. There was speculation he was going to be number 1.
Right.
Now, ultimately, Cam Ward, it was always him or Cam Ward. But how the hell you go from speculating about him or Cam Ward to Jackson Dart
and wanted to knock him down a peg by making sure his sons didn't walk into the NFL with silver spoons. The idea that Shedeur wasn't drafted high because of who his father is, not because of his own talent, is making people angry. This is a guy who threw for thousands of yards, who demonstrated leadership, accuracy, and maturity on the field. He's not some kid riding his dad's coattails. He's earned his place. But apparently, earning your place isn't enough when there's a silent war brewing between your father and the league. And let's talk about Brady for a second. This is a guy who knows what it's like to be overlooked. He was famously drafted 199th overall. So you'd think he'd go out of his way to make sure someone like Shedeur didn't have to go through the same painful experience. But now fans are wondering if Tom, for all his speeches about work ethic and resilience, just decided to stay quiet when it mattered most. Even President Joe Biden chimed in, slamming the NFL in a now viral comment. He called the league stupid for passing on Shedeur, saying it made no sense that teams weren't falling over themselves to grab a quarterback with those genes, that talent, and that coaching lineage. The fact that Shedeur didn't get picked until the 5th round wasn't just a shock, it was downright suspicious. The situation has taken on a life of its own, with fans calling it a power play, an effort to silence a family that refuses to be controlled. Because that's what this really is about, control. Deion isn't the kind of coach to bow to NHL traditions. He speaks his mind, promotes his sons unapologetically, and does things on his own terms. And the league, well, they're not used to that.
It's not about talent anymore. It's about something else. And I'm going to tell you, I spent a large amount of the last 24 hours thinking about nothing more than I was thinking about collusion. Because how in the hell does 32 teams in the National Football League pass on a quarterback that was universally recognized one of the top 3 quarterbacks in the country entering this draft, and 32 teams passed on him? Not once, not twice, not 3 times, but 4 different times they passed on him. How the hell has that happened? 4 rounds. It doesn't happen to a quarterback. We've never seen anything like this before. We've seen guys drop because of injuries. We've seen guys drop because of off-field issues, but we've never seen a quarterback projected to be a top 20 pick, universally recognized one of the top 3 quarterbacks in the draft, projected to be a first rounder, in all likelihood a safe bet of a late first rounder, and drop literally to the 5th round. We haven't seen anything like that. And when you're talking about the owners, I'm going to keep in mind, and I tweeted about this, seems very Kaepernick-like, as in Colin Kaepernick.
So instead of embracing a new era of talent and charisma, they're punishing it. One of the most talked about theories online is that Shedeur and his brothers simply didn't fit the mold of what the NFL wants from black players. The league has always had a soft spot for a particular kind of narrative, the classic from the struggle to the spotlight story. You know, a mom who worked 3 jobs, a dad who was never around, growing up in the projects, barely making it through, then making it big in the NHL. It's a tale that gets told again and again. But the Sanders brothers, they don't fit that script at all. They grew up privileged, with 2 loving parents, thanks to Deion Sanders' generational wealth. Their dad is not just involved, he's front and center, coaching, guiding, showing affection and support on and off the field. Their mom is present too. The Sanders brothers didn't have to fight their way out of poverty, and the NHL doesn't seem to know what to do with that. The fact that they had a head start in life and are talented seems to be almost offensive to some of the league's gatekeepers. Even worse, at least in the NHFHL's eyes, Shedeur and his brothers don't walk into interviews begging for a shot or acting like they owe the league their lives. They know their worth, and that rubs people the wrong way. Word is, the NHFHL didn't like that one bit. They didn't want another superstar who could afford to walk away. They wanted someone desperate, someone moldable. But the Sanders boys, they'll be just fine with or without football. That independence, that confidence, it made them a threat, but that's only part of the story. Reports started surfacing that Shedeur didn't exactly help himself during the pre-draft process. Apparently, he canceled several interviews with teams. Some say it was due to an injury, others claim it was without any explanation at all. The interviews he did show up for, word is, he came across as cocky, disinterested, and disrespectful. One NFL assistant coach even went off anonymously, saying it was the worst formal interview he'd ever sat through. According to him, Shedeur gave off entitled energy.
They'll views you and values you. They will humble every player. And so I think for the Sanders camp, they had this perception of Shedeur as a lock top 2 or 3 draft pick, and they approached the process that way. And there was never anyone from the outside who could get through to them and say, wait a second, he's not guaranteed to be a top 2 or 3 draft pick. And the fact that you are approaching this process that way is hurting him. You know, there's this almost folk story about Dion. The New York Giants asked him to take the Wonderlic during his pre-draft process, and he raised his hand and said, "What pick do you have?" And they answered, and he said, "I'll be gone by then," and he got up and left. I don't know if that story's true or not, but it's been around as long as I've been alive, right? And it almost felt like they were handling the process that same way of saying, okay, well, we're not gonna give our all to teams drafting late in the first round because we're not going to be there. And it felt more like they were saying, why should we want you?
Didn't take responsibility for his mistakes, had bad body language, blamed teammates, and just wasn't that impressive. Ouch. That matters a lot because pre-draft interviews are more than just meet and greets. They're auditions for how well a player can be controlled by the team and the media machine. NFL executives don't just want talent. They want someone who will toe the line, play the PR game, and make them look good. Shedeur, it seems, didn't check those boxes. He was too self-assured, too bold, and way too uninterested in playing the role of the obedient rookie. And if that wasn't enough, Shedeur added more fuel to the fire with his public behavior. In one interview, he referred to himself as a legend. He's also known for showing up to games wearing expensive watches, and once even flashed a $350,000 timepiece in an opponent's face during a pre-game trash talk exchange. That kind of stunt doesn't exactly scream humble leader. It screams confidence, maybe even arrogance, and for some NFL insiders, that was a red flag. He also skipped drills at the NHFHL Scouting Combine, something that, while not technically forbidden, is considered bad form. If you're invited, you're expected to participate, and his decision to only interview with the top 7 teams, that really rubbed people the wrong way. While it's not unheard of, top picks often do this, when Shedeur did it, he got labeled arrogant. According to insiders, he even turned the tables during those interviews, asking teams what they planned to do to support him. That's bold, but not illegal. Still, people didn't like it. Even after Shedeur finally got picked up by the Cleveland Browns, the drama didn't stop. If anything, it got louder. Legendary quarterback Warren Moon publicly called him out during an interview, saying Shedeur needed to lose the attitude and get off his high horse. He reminded Shedeur that being a quarterback is different from being a cornerback. It's a leadership role. You're the face of the team. You don't just get to be great on the field, you have to be a model representative of it. And for that, Warren said Shedeur had a lot of growing up to do.
Why should Shedeur Sanders want the New York Giants or the Cleveland Browns or the Pittsburgh Steelers instead of what every other prospect does is they go into those interviews and say, here's why you should want me. You're selling yourself. It's a job interview. And they really didn't approach it that way. And I think, I don't know that it was personal from the NFL. I think people were just turned off by how they handled the process. And then you have to go through the conversation of how much attention are you willing for a backup quarterback to have in your building? Because once you get past the starter portion of the draft, you're a backup. Once we got there, it becomes the conversation of, okay, do we want all this attention around a quarterback that might be our third guy? And at Cleveland, he might be the fourth guy. And so I think once the slide started, it was hard to stop because of that.
Warren Moon's advice to Shedeur Sanders was mostly positive, but his constant nudging to stay humble seemed more like an underhanded jab to a lot of people. But then came Deion Sanders' comments that really stirred the pot. In an interview, Deion said he wouldn't advise Shedeur to go with certain teams if they tried to draft him. That didn't sit well with NHF et al. Insiders, who interpreted it as Deion suggesting some teams weren't good enough for his son. It felt like an attempt to influence the draft process itself, and the league didn't appreciate that. But here's where it gets interesting. Deion isn't the first NFL parent to try and steer their kid's pro career. Peyton Manning did the same thing for his sons, and it didn't cause nearly as much of a stir. So why does it feel different when Deion does it? Is it because Deion's larger-than-life personality and confidence rubbed some people the wrong way during his playing days? Or maybe it's because there are people in the NFL who've been waiting for a chance to bring him down ever since he played. The theories are flying all over the internet, and everyone has their own take. What's clear, though, is that both of Deion's sons seem to have been passed over or overlooked for reasons that went beyond just their talent. Shedeur Sanders, for instance, was one of the most talked about quarterbacks in college football.
They didn't even have him on their board. They took him off. And they took him off because the owner said, take him off. I don't want that guy. I don't want this entitled person on our team.
A lot of this was because of Deion Sanders. I think a lot of this was about a message to his father. A lot of this was about, hey, you'll never run this. This is us. We ain't even hire you as a coach in the National Football League. What makes you think you don't have that kind of say?
Tom Brady sabotaged Shedeur because he's plotting one last comeback. It's not as crazy as you might think. Mark Davis wanted Tom Brady to be a part owner so bad, he basically gave him 5% of the Raiders for hundreds of millions less than it was.
He had the stats, the skills, and the spotlight, and everyone thought he was destined for a top draft pick. But when it was time for the draft, he slipped hard. There was no off-field drama to explain it. So why did Shedeur's draft stock plummet? There's a theory that it was more about the NFL's behind-the-scenes politics than anything Shedeur did wrong. He was expected to be one of the top picks, but suddenly he wasn't. And it felt like the league was punishing him for being confident, for having Deion Sanders as a father, or maybe even for not fitting into the mold they wanted from black players. Some have pointed the finger at Tom Brady, wondering why he didn't step in to help Shedeur get picked earlier. After all, he was a mentor to Shedeur, and their connection was public knowledge. But here's a hot take: maybe it's for the best that Tom stayed out of it. Had he stepped in, it might have given people the chance to accuse Shedeur of only getting the spot because of Brady's influence, which could have tainted his journey. Now, no one can say he didn't earn his place on his own. But the bigger question remains, should Tom have done more? And what about the bigger issue here? Do you think Deion's sons were blackballed by the NFL? If so, why? Was it because of their confidence, their privilege, or simply because they were Deion's sons? Let's hear your thoughts. What do you think happened here? Drop your comments below and let's get into it.